Part 6. Late in the night, he looked over at Mildred. She was awake. There was a tiny dance of melody in the air. Her seashell was tamped in her ear again, and she was listening to far people in far places, her eyes wide and staring at the fathoms of blackness above her in the ceiling. Wasn't there an old joke about the wife who talked so much on the telephone that her desperate husband ran out to the nearest store and telephoned her to ask what was for dinner? Well then, why didn't he buy himself an audio seashell broadcasting station and talk to his wife late at night, murmur, whisper, shout, scream, yell? But what would he whisper? What would he yell? What could he say? And suddenly she was so strange he couldn't believe he knew her at all. He was in someone else's house, like those other jokes people told of the gentleman, drunk, coming home late at night, unlocking the wrong door, entering a wrong room, and betting with a stranger, and getting up early and going to work, and neither of them the wiser. "Millie," he whispered. "What?" "I didn't mean to startle you. What I want to know is, well? When did we meet? And where?" "When did we meet for what?" she asked. "I mean, originally." He knew she must be frowning in the dark. He clarified it. "The first time we ever met. Where was it? And when?" "Why, it was at—" She stopped. "I don't know," she said. "He was cold. Can't you remember?" "It's been so long." "Only 10 years. That's all. Only 10. Don't get excited. I'm trying to think." She laughed, an odd little laugh that went up and up. "Funny. How funny not to remember where or when you met your husband or wife." He lay massaging his eyes, his brow, and the back of his neck slowly. He held both hands over his eyes and applied a steady pressure there as if to crush memory into place. It was suddenly more important than any other thing in a lifetime that he know where he met Mildred. It doesn't matter. She was up in the bathroom now, and he heard the water running and the swallowing sound she made. "No, I guess not," he said. He tried to count how many times she swallowed, and he thought of the visit from the two zinc oxide-faced men with the cigarette in their straight-lined mouths and the electronic-eyed snake winding down into the layer upon layer of night and stone and stagnant spring water, and he wanted to call out to her, "How many have you taken tonight?" The capsules. "How many will you take later and not know?" And so on, every hour. Or maybe not tonight, tomorrow night. And me not sleeping tonight or tomorrow night or any night for a long while, now that this has started. And he thought of her lying on the bed with the two technicians standing straight over her, not bent with concern, but only standing straight, arms folded. And he remembered thinking that if she died, he was certain he wouldn't cry. For it would be the dying of an unknown, a street face, a newspaper image, and it was suddenly so very wrong that he had begun to cry. Not at death, but at the thought of not crying at death. A silly, empty man near a silly, empty woman, while the hungry snake made her still more empty. How do you get so empty, he wondered. Who takes it out of you? And that awful flower the other night, the dandelion, it had summed up everything, hadn't it? What a shame you're not in love with anyone. And why not? Well, wasn't there a wall between him and Mildred? When you came down to it, literally not just one wall, but so far 3, and expensive too. And the uncles, the aunts, the cousins, the nieces, the nephews that lived in those walls, the gibbering pack of tree apes that said nothing, 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 and said it loud, loud, loud. He had taken to calling them relatives from the very first. How's Uncle Luis today? Who? And Aunt Maud. The most significant memory he had of Mildred, really, was of a little girl in a forest without trees. How odd. Or rather, a little girl lost on a plateau where there used to be trees. You could feel the memory of their shapes all about. Sitting in the center of the living room, what a good job of labeling that was now. No matter when he came in, the walls were always talking to Mildred. Something must be done. Yes, something must be done. Well, let's not stand and talk. Let's do it. I'm so mad I could spit. What was it all about? Mildred couldn't say. Who was mad at whom? Mildred didn't quite know. What were they going to do? Well, said Mildred, wait around and see. He had waited around to see. A great thunderstorm of sound gushed from the walls. Music bombarded him at such an immense volume that his bones were almost shaken from their tendons. He felt his jaw vibrate, his eyes wobble in his head. He was a victim of concussion. When it was all over, he felt like a man who had been thrown from a cliff, whirled in a centrifuge and spat out over a waterfall that fell and fell into emptiness and never quite touched bottom. Never, never quite, no, not quite touched bottom. And you fell so fast you didn't touch the sides either. Never quite touched anything. The thunder faded, the music died. There, said Mildred. And it was indeed remarkable. Something had happened, even though the people on the walls of the room had barely moved, and nothing had really been settled. You had the impression that someone had turned on a washing machine or sucked you up in a giant vacuum. You drowned in music and pure cacophony. He came out of the room, sweating and on the point of collapse. Behind him, Mildred sat in her chair, and the voices went on again. Well, everything will be all right now, said an aunt. Oh, don't be so sure, said a cousin. Now, don't get angry. Who's angry? You are. I am? You are mad. Why would I be mad? Because. That's all very well, cried Montag. But what are they mad about? Who are these people? Who's that man and who's that woman? Are they husband and wife? Are they divorced, engaged? What? Good God, nothing's connected up. They, said Mildred, well, they had this fight, you see. They certainly fight a lot. You should listen. I think they're married. Yes, they're married. Why? And if it was not the 3 walls, soon to be 4 walls, and the dream complete, then it was the open car and Mildred driving 100 miles an hour across town, he shouting at her and she shouting back, and both trying to hear what was said, but hearing only the scream of the car. At least keep it down to the minimum, he yelled. What? She cried. Keep it down to the 55, the minimum, he shouted. The what? She shrieked. Speed, he shouted. And she pushed it up to 105 miles an hour and tore the breath from his mouth. When they stepped out of the car, she had the seashells stuffed in her ears. Silence, only the wind blowing softly. Mildred, he stirred in bed. He reached over, pulled the tiny musical insect out of her ear. Mildred, Mildred. Yes, her voice was faint. He felt he was one of the creatures electronically inserted between the slots of the phonocolor walls, speaking, but the speech not piercing the crystal barrier. He could only pantomime, hoping she would turn his way and see him. They could not touch through the glass. Mildred, did you know that girl I was telling you about? What girl? She was almost asleep. The girl next door. What girl next door? You know, the high school girl, Clarice, her name is. Oh, yes, said his wife. I haven't seen her for a few days. 4 days, to be exact. Have you seen her? No. I've meant to talk to you about her. Strange. Oh, I know the one you mean. I thought you would. Her, said Mildred in the dark. What about her? Asked Montag. I meant to tell you. Forgot. Tell me now. What is it? I think she's gone. Gone? Whole family moved out somewhere, but she's gone for good. I think she's dead. We couldn't be talking about the same girl. No, the same girl, McClellan. Run over by a car 4 days ago. I'm not sure, but I think she's dead. The family moved away anyway. I don't know, but I think she's dead. You're not sure of it? No, not sure, pretty sure. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Forgot. 4 days ago? I forgot all about it. 4 days ago, he said, quietly lying there. They lay there in the dark room, not moving, either of them. Good night, she said. He heard a faint rustle. Her hand moved. The electronic thimble moved like a praying mantis on the pillow, touched by her hand. Now it was in her ear again, humming. He listened, and his wife was singing under her breath. Outside the house, a shadow moved, an autumn wind rose up and faded away, but there was something else in the silence that he heard. It was like a breath exhaled upon the window. It was like a faint drift of greenish, luminescent smoke, the motion of a single, huge October leaf blowing across the lawn and away. The hound, he thought. It was out there tonight. It was out there now. If I opened the window. He did not open the window. What's interesting about this is when you start to see the differences between Montag and Mildred, how Mildred represents the world around him, the people in the world around him. Mildred is an example of the society, how society has shifted and what society has become. They've been distracted by the big wall screen TVs, and they're distracted by the earbuds, the little, shells, the little seashells that they keep in their ears, that listens to music and movies and TV like all day long. The society has really been drowned out by the quote unquote entertainment of their day, whereas Montag isn't swayed by those things, and he's not caught up in them, and he sees how damaging that kind of just blankness to the world, how damaging that can actually be. And so you start to see, even just really early on in the book, so we're not even a full quarter of the way through the book yet, but we start to see this conflict that's between Mildred and Montag. Conflict in the way that they view the world, conflict in the way that they view each other. I would be interested from Mildred's point of view if she sort of saw Montag as kind of weird for asking some of the questions that he asks or caring about the things he cares about. You can see she's desensitized to the world around her because the death of a teenage girl doesn't seem to affect her. She's very cold, where Montag is very shocked and surprised, and how could you forget something like that? So go ahead and I just want you to think today. I'm not going to ask for a response. I really just want you to think about how that maybe mimics some things that go on in our society. And if this is something, that part of what was written by Ray Bradbury, could that still be something that happens in our society, bits and pieces of this? So I hope you enjoyed today's, and I will have more for you tomorrow.